2001. Limp Bizkit were the top of the charts. I got my driving licence. All's well in the world. It was the last time we saw Coventry City in the Premier League as well. Taylor Rockwell, they've been away a while. Do Coventry have what it takes to beat the drop? Tell us all about Frank Lampard's team.
I had a lot to say. Now I want to know more about your Limp Bizkit and driving experiences, Ryan.
Go on. They're related.
I figured they were. All right, fine. Let's talk Coventry instead. Much as I know Joe has lots of thoughts on the Fred Durst oeuvre.
Yes.
What did they do last season? They got themselves promoted. Come on now. They won the championship. They're back in the top flight, as Ryan said, for the first time in 25 years, which is no small feat given where this club has been. 9 years ago, they were preparing for their first season in the fourth tier for 59 years, and from 2019 to 2021, they had to share St. Andrews with their landlords, Birmingham. And a lot of things have changed. A lot of that is thanks to the ownership of Doug King, as well as the efforts of their former manager, Mark Robbins, who was sacked in November of 2024. That was his second stint in charge. He was there for about 8 years in total, and he helped bring a lot of stability and consistency to this team. Very much the same thing for owner Doug King. He acquired a majority ownership, in November of 2022. He expanded that to full ownership in January of 2023. And he has a very hands-on approach and has had a very hands-on approach since acquiring that ownership. He oversaw the restructuring of club operations, the removal of debt. There's an emphasis on long-term growth and stability. And it truly does seem like there is a long-term vision, a long-term preparedness for how to make Coventry continue to be successful, even if that means maybe not the most successful season in the Premier League. More on that to come, certainly. But this summer, they've done, I think, good business. They've strengthened a very inexperienced squad when it comes to the Premier League, and they've also kept around some of the experience they already had. Probably the most important one, I'll talk more about him in a bit, is Carl Rushworth. His loan from last season was made permanent. He was an outstanding goalkeeper for them, and I think they will need him to do a pretty outstanding job this season if they want to stay in and around survival. They added highly rated Ghanaian international Caleb Urenti, who arrives from FC Nordsjælland. He's a 20-year-old central midfielder. More on him in just a little bit. I want to jump to Loum Chauna, a name that I was not familiar with at all, despite him playing in the Premier League last season. He played for Burnley, and he has come on a $26.6 million deal. Left-footed winger who'll usually start on the right. He wants to cut inside. That suits the Coventry system just fine. He's had a really interesting career so far. So he's 22 years old, born in Chad, raised in Rennes, loaned to second division side Dijon because he wasn't going to get any time with Rennes, basically, who were then relegated. So then he was sold to Serie B side Salernitana, who were then relegated, but he was bought out by Lazio, but never given a consistent run of starts, and really he was more of like an asset they thought they might flip, and then they did when they were asset stripping. They sold him to Burnley, with whom he was relegated last season, and now he's at Coventry. It hasn't been like the top of the table career for Chauna, but I think he's kind of poised with all that experience to be an important attacker in a team that need new and varied attackers. And I think that's going to be another key part of Coventry as we talk about them. And that will be a lot of what Frank Lampard is there to figure out. He is the League Managers Association Manager of the season after last year. Only 7 of his current team have played in a Premier League minute, but he's also somehow the longest tenured English manager in the Premier League. So there you go. Premier League is not a place to go if you are English and you want to have a long-term career, apparently, unless maybe you're Frank Lampard. We'll find out. He's going to want them to press high, make life very uncomfortable for their opponents. Can they do that well enough against Premier League sides? It worked really well in the Championship last year, but now in the Premier League, you have teams that are much more used to that, much more technical, much more capable of handling that pressure. So can you kind of punch above your weight early if you're Coventry, catch some teams when maybe they're not quite in like maybe still a little bit in preseason form. Maybe they're missing some players. Maybe they haven't done a ton of like opposition research at this point. So Lampard is going to need his team to like hit the ground running if they want to get some points and build a little bit of consistency and confidence. Their style of play is most likely to be a 4-2-3-1, roughly speaking. Fullbacks advance high and wide. Wide attackers move centrally, hence why the inverted wide attackers are ideal. And then you'll have a deep-lying central midfielder who can make it into like a 2-3-5 or a 3-2-5 in possession, depending on the opposition. And that is where I want to talk about the man, Caleb Urenti, for a moment. One of my predictions, this is not my VSP, but one prediction is that broadcasters will start saying his name differently about halfway through the season because it's written Caleb Urenti, but I believe I'm correct in saying that it is pronounced Caleb Urenti. So we'll find out if that is the case. But if it is, I imagine we'll start with the hard K and then we'll go to the ch by like around Boxing Day.
Always.
But he is a really, really interesting signing. And I think, like, basically my theory, and I'll give you my VSP now, is that they're going to be relegated, Coventry City, but Frank Lampard will not be sacked. And I think this is a season in which they are going to basically pull some surprises, stay alive if they can, but I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of, like, okay, it's not working 2 months in, Lampard's gone, we're bringing in a new manager, we're sacking all these players. I think it's very much about we want to play well, play our style, have some players that shine that maybe we flip if and when we're relegated for a lot of money. We reinvest that money, we build up more strength, and we kind of have to maybe be a yo-yo club a little bit, ideally, to then ultimately become a more established Premier League side. That is my read on Coventry City at present, because they're not going out and really, like, they're spending money, don't get me wrong, but they're not breaking the bank. They're not trying to be a team that's like, we're going to be even more aggressive and fast-paced and attacking. They're going to play the exact same system that they played. They're going to have, I think, better players to make that possible, but they still have a number of gaps in the team. But Urenti is not one of them. He is a really, really astute signing, in my opinion. He's coming over, as I said, from Nordsjælland in the Danish Superliga, where he was in the 100th percentile for pass accuracy, but then also ranked really highly in terms of progressive passes, progressive carries, direct ball accuracy. He is essentially very good at dropping a little bit deeper, winning the ball, like, and then playing forward vertically. Like, he's basically what we kind of wish Tyler Adams had in some of his skill set. Like, that's what it seems like to me. And so I think he is going to be a really strong player right away for Coventry City, and that seems to have been the selling point for how Lampard got him. It was a conversation between the two where Lampard essentially promised him, it sounds like, starting minutes from the jump in the Premier League. There were other Premier League sides who were offering opportunity, like slow selection and the like, and instead, I think immediate starting in the Premier League was good enough for Urenti, and I think he's going to do a lot for this team because they can press, but they can sit off and then try to counter really directly. He's a really good ball winner who can then play long direct balls and play some dangerous passes and carry the ball forward if he needs to. I think he will make them a much more functional team. I don't know how much more functional they are going to be ahead of him because the defense is very solid. They return like their entire back five now because Carl Rushworth, the goalkeeper who was, I believe, goalkeeper of the season last year in the Champo, he signed on a fee of around $30 million. They got him on loan last season from Brighton, and they have exercised a buyback clause or inserted a buyback clause, Brighton. So if and when Coventry go down, I feel like there might be a buyback and then a sell-on that immediately follows. There is very, very little established depth behind Rushworth. It seems like they've spent a lot of money to get the guy that they want to be their number one, and then they're going to do some finger crossing that he does not get hurt. Because if so, you're looking at like a 34-year-old who's played for 34 different clubs and a 25-year-old who's played for like 4 clubs, but none of them at a particularly high level. It's not a ton of depth. You do have a ton of experience with center backs Bobby Thomas and Liam Kitching. They played a combined 6,200 minutes last season. That's good for 5th and 7th on the team. The only 2 defenders who played more minutes were left back Jay Da Silva and right back Milan van Iwijk. So back 4 and the goalkeeper, very established, a lot of experience. Then you do have depth behind them. As you go forward, it gets a little bit trickier. Matt Grimes is the captain. He's probably going to start alongside Urenti. And then it's kind of a grab bag, including Haji Wright, who was their top goal scorer last season with 17 goals. He moved from a more wide attacker to a more central attacker. That seemed to benefit the team, generally speaking, but he still underperformed his XG. I think XG was like around 18.5. So it means he wasn't taking his chances as cleanly as he could have been. And then the other options maybe that could potentially challenge him just aren't proven at Premier League level. Like, so they could break through, but it's a lot of like 25, 26-year-olds in and around the attack who've been very good, but we don't know if they can make that jump. And so it could be Efren Mason-Clark from Jamaica. It could be Josh Eccles from England, Brandon Thomas Asante from Ghana. Sakato is a Japanese wide attacker whose name I cannot remember. The first name I cannot remember. It just seems like they've got a bunch of options, but I don't know how much like elite difference they can make when you're a team that wants to like press high, attack high, like go at the opposition as quickly as you can again, I think that works if you are the best team in the championship. When you are the best team in the championship, now trying to do that to establish Premier League teams, that's where I feel like it could be in for a rough road for Coventry City. But I just think this is about a long-term project. It's about getting them back to where they were, albeit back when Ryan was first driving and listening to Limp Bizkit, pre-Buckethead, I think. And so it seems like they're going to try to maximize this season, the revenue they get, what they can do with that, how much they can reinvest it, how much they can basically give themselves better sporting infrastructure, and then like put themselves back in the window to be promoted the season thereafter. They may well stay up. They could spring a surprise. It does seem like a season in which the teams that are coming up have their work cut out for them against a lot of Premier League teams that either already did really well last season or have strengthened a lot and would expect to do well this year. But I think Coventry, especially early on with the way they play, the aggressiveness, the top scoring team in the championship by a wide margin, it does feel like there could be some goals, there could be some surprises along the way. Ultimately, I think they start to kind of fall down the table and then end up staying in the relegation zone for a good chunk of time.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride for Coventry City over the last couple of decades with the Ricoh Arena, with sharing with Northampton. You mentioned with Birmingham as well. They've suffered a lot, Coventry fans. So I'm glad they're back at the top seat, definitely. So good for them.
And I think,
Taylor,
if I may, sorry, I have even more to say about Urenti because I think he is going to shine for them in so many different ways. My other prediction is that he will be playing either for a Premier League team next season or a Champions League team. And he feels like one of those that somehow Bayern or Dortmund pick up for some amount of money and then he just becomes an every game starter for a high-level Bundesliga team or a high-level Serie A team or something next season. I think even if it's not a great season for Coventry, I think Urenti is going to be a critical player for them and a key player in sort of a breakout way.
Not the midfielder I was hoping you would highlight, Taylor. That would be AFC Wimbledon legend Jack Rodoni, of course. Who
American eligible.
We've mentioned has an American grandfather. He could be on USMNT if he does well this season. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean he's of a group like Frank Onyeka, I think is another one. He was there last season on loan. They've made him permanent for about $8 million. Rodoni was an incredible player for them, incredibly consistent, really strong, a good leader, leadership figure. Obviously, that's the American in him. You're welcome for that. But it's another one where they were really, really good. I'd put him in the Haji Wright category of really good, really important last season. Can they do it in the Premier League? Can they kind of step up or grow their game enough as fast as they need to keep those spots? Because others are coming in and could take them. So the business, I think, has been about strengthening known areas. Onyeka made permanent Gustavo Omer from Sheffield United. Each of them brought in for $8 million. Omer had played for Coventry, was sold in August of 2023, so they know the player. He's a little bit older, but they have some experience there. It feels like they've brought in players that make them better, that give them consistency, that give them stability, but I don't know if they're going to really elevate them to that next caliber.
Okay, excellent stuff. And your VSP was that they will do the thing that statistically most likely they will do,
but not sack their manager, which is statistically unlikely. I don't know. I guess did Ipswich did that? They kept Kieran McKenna.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention Ipswich is what I'm hearing, Taylor, is they kind of want to do an Ipswich where, spoiler alert, we've not previewed them yet, but they're back in the Premier League this year. But the first time that they were in the Premier League, they kind of had a similar route where they'd been up and down the divisions, maybe been promoted ahead of schedule. They spent that money on infrastructure and scouting, and now it looks like they're back stronger. That kind of seems like what Coventry, not that they're resigned to being relegated, but it kind of feels like that's a likely outcome for them.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not. That's a really good way to put it, Graham. It's not resignation. It's not we've got no chance. It just seems like there's smart brains in the room who are sort of see relegation as not terminal, as a thing that can happen, and how do we plan accordingly for it, and how do we plan around it, and build so that if we do stay up, how are we in a good position? But if we go down, how can we stay in a good position? It just seems like there's more logical thought. I might well be wrong. It's not as though I have a ton of expertise with Coventry City or their ownership model, but from everything I've read, it just feels like it has been smart, logical decisions along the way, including sacking the manager and bringing in Frank Lampard, who has been very good for them. And at a time when his stock was at a low, it was after the second stint at Chelsea where he's sort of the babysitter for a Chelsea team that don't make any sense. And then he comes in and he has had an impact on this team. He's been able to recruit players, as I said. He's gotten them playing the way he wants them to play. Manager of the season last season. We'll see what the next one brings.